The text message arrived at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and it shattered something inside me that I didn't even know was still capable of breaking after all these years of witnessing the worst humanity had to offer. Only Dad can come. Stay home or you'll shame me. 12 words. That's all it took for my son Daniel to erase 28 years of motherhood, like I was nothing more than a mistake he needed to correct before his perfect wedding day. I sat there in my apartment holding my phone like it might suddenly explode in my hands, reading those words over and over and over again until they started to blur together into meaningless shapes that hurt just as much as the actual meaning. The coffee in my mug had gone stone cold at least an hour ago, maybe longer. Outside my window, Seattle's rain hammered relentlessly against the glass, matching the rhythm of my pulse that thundered loudly in my ears like a drum announcing my failure as a mother. My name is Michelle Harper. I'm 53 years old, a former homicide detective who spent 20 years with the Seattle Police Department working the most horrific cases imaginable. Now, I work as a private investigator, taking whatever cases come my way to make ends meet. Over the course of my career, I've encountered the darkest sides of humanity. I've stood over bodies that would make your stomach churn, witnessed brutality that would make most people sick to their core. I've looked straight into the eyes of the most ruthless individuals and watched them lie without a hint of remorse or humanity. I've seen things that would keep ordinary people up at night, haunted by images they'd never be able to forget. But nothing in all those years of dealing with violent offenders, the lowest of the low, prepared me for this particular kind of wound, one that struck deep into my soul and left me gasping for air. Daniel was getting married in exactly 5 days, to Jessica Williams, some hotshot finance executive she'd met about 18 months ago at a charity gala that his father Robert had dragged him to. I'd only met her twice during their entire relationship, and both meetings had been brief and unsatisfying. Both times, something deep in my gut twisted uncomfortably, triggering that same primal instinct that had kept me alive through 2 decades on the force dealing with the worst criminals imaginable. But Daniel seemed happy, or at least that's what he kept telling everyone who asked, and I'd kept my mouth shut about my concerns and suspicions. What kind of mother wants to be that woman, right? The overprotective mom who can't let go, who sees threats lurking in every dark corner, who thinks no woman will ever be good enough for her son. Now he didn't even want me at his own wedding. His wedding day, the day I'd dreamed about since he was born, the day I'd imagined standing beside him and welcoming someone worthy of him into our family. Gone, erased, like I'd never mattered at all. I forced myself up from the chair and walked slowly to the window, my legs feeling like they were made of lead that weighed 1,000 pounds each. My reflection stared back at me from the rain-streaked glass, graying hair that used to be dark brown and thick, deep lines around my eyes that definitely hadn't been there 10 years ago when I still felt young, shoulders that used to be broader and stronger before age started taking its inevitable toll on my body. The apartment was completely quiet, except for the constant drumming of rain against the windows. Too quiet, actually. Unnaturally quiet, in a way that made the silence feel oppressive. I'd been living alone for 5 long years now, ever since Robert packed his bags and left me. Ever since Daniel started slowly but surely pulling away from me like I was toxic. Ever since everything that actually mattered in my life started slipping through my fingers like water that I couldn't hold no matter how tightly I tried to grasp it. My phone suddenly buzzed in my hand, making me jump slightly. A text message from Georgia Simmons, my old partner from my days on the force, and one of the few people I still trusted completely in this world. "You okay? Daniel told Robert he uninvited you from the wedding." So everyone already knew. Just perfect. Absolutely perfect. The humiliation was complete and total. Not only was I uninvited from my own son's wedding, but everyone in our social circle knew about it and was probably talking about it behind my back. I hit the call button. Georgia picked up on the very first ring, like she'd been sitting there waiting for me to reach out to her. "Michelle," Georgia's voice was extremely careful, using that particular tone you'd use when talking to someone standing on a ledge 12 stories up and threatening to jump. "I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. I know how much this must hurt." "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, my voice coming out rougher and more damaged than I'd intended it to sound. She sighed heavily on the other end of the line, and I could picture her sitting in her living room, probably with a glass of wine in her hand. "That Daniel doesn't want you at the wedding. That Jessica somehow convinced him that you'd make some kind of scene and ruin everything for him. That it's better this way for everyone involved, cleaner and simpler." "Jessica convinced him." I repeated the words slowly, tasting each one like poison on my tongue, letting the bitterness of it sink in. "That's what Robert told me when I talked to him earlier today." "Look, Michelle, maybe you should just respect Daniel's wishes here. Let him have his special day without any drama or complications. You can sit down and talk to him after the wedding is over, and things calm down a bit." "No." The word came out hard and flat, brooking no argument. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear Georgia thinking, weighing her next words carefully. "Michelle, please don't do something you're going to regret later. Think about this carefully. I'm going to that wedding, Georgia. He's my son, my only child. I don't care what he says or what anyone else thinks. He's also an adult man who's capable of making his own choices, even if we don't personally agree with them. He's making a terrible mistake." The words came out much harder than I'd intended, practically growling with frustration and anger. "That woman, Jessica, there's something seriously wrong with her. I can feel it in my bones, Georgia. My gut is screaming at me." "You've only met her exactly twice, Michelle. That's not a lot to base a judgment on." "I was a homicide detective for 20 goddamn years, Georgia. I know when someone's hiding something dangerous. It's an instinct you develop over time, and mine has never steered me wrong. Never." Georgia fell quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear her thinking on the other end of the line, probably trying to figure out how to talk me down from this ledge. Then she said carefully, choosing her words with precision, "What exactly are you planning to do about this situation?" "Find out what she's hiding, and I've got exactly 5 days to do it before he makes the biggest mistake of his life." I hung up before she could try to talk me out of what I knew I had to do, before she could appeal to reason or caution or any of the other things that would normally stop me from crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. The next morning arrived cold and grey, typical Seattle weather that matched my mood perfectly. I started digging into Jessica Williams' life the way I'd dug into hundreds of suspects over my career on the force. That's what I do now in my current work as a private investigator. I dig deep into people's lives and uncover their secrets, the things they tried desperately to hide from the world. People hire me to find things they've lost or discover things they desperately need to know about their spouses or business partners. Usually it's straightforward insurance fraud cases or cheating spouses caught in lies that they think are clever. Pretty simple stuff that pays the bills and keeps me busy. But this was completely different. This was deeply personal in a way nothing had been for years, maybe ever. Jessica Williams, 31 years old, currently employed at Sterling Financial Group in one of those gleaming towers downtown that touched the clouds. Columbia University graduate, or at least that's what her LinkedIn profile claimed, with its professional photo and impressive list of accomplishments. Family originally from Connecticut, supposedly old money going back generations to the Mayflower, or whatever rich people claim. On paper, looking at her resume and background and social media presence, she was absolutely perfect. Daniel's ultimate prize catch that any parent should be thrilled about, the daughter-in-law every father dreams of. I started with all the absolute basics that any decent investigator begins with when running a background check. Full credit report from all 3 bureaus, comprehensive criminal background check through my contacts at the department, complete social media analysis going back years. Everything came back remarkably clean. Too clean, actually. suspiciously clean in a way that raised red flags. In my extensive experience investigating people over 2 decades, nobody's record is ever that spotlessly clean, unless they're actively hiding something or they've paid to have things scrubbed from their record. I climbed into my car, a 10-year-old sedan that had seen better days, and drove to her office building, one of those massive glass and steel towers in the financial district that cost more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. I parked across the street and settled in to wait with the patience I'd developed over decades of surveillance work. Waiting was 90% of detective work, something they never show you in movies or television shows. I spent nearly 3 solid hours sitting in my car, watching the main entrance like a hawk, drinking cold coffee from a thermos, and ignoring my aging bladder's complaints. Jessica finally emerged around noon with 2 other women wearing expensive suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I recognized the type immediately. Young finance executives who thought they ruled the world because they moved money around on computer screens. They walked 3 blocks to some upscale bistro that had white tablecloths and a wine list thicker than a phone book. I followed at a careful distance, staying far enough back that they wouldn't notice me, but close enough to maintain visual contact. I stayed outside on the street, watching through the large front windows as they were seated at a table near the middle of the restaurant. Their body language told me absolutely everything I needed to know, and I mentally catalogued every gesture and expression. Jessica was visibly tense, her shoulders tight and hunched up near her ears in classic stress posture. The other 2 women were doing most of the talking, gesturing emphatically with their hands like they were making important points. Jessica kept compulsively checking her phone every few minutes, her leg bouncing rapidly under the table in obvious anxiety. Her face was flushed, and even from outside I could see the tension in her jaw. Something was definitely very wrong in Jessica Williams's world. I pulled out my phone and called an old friend at the Securities and Exchange Commission, a woman named Tanya, who owed me a significant favor from a complicated case several years back when I'd helped her track down a witness who'd fled to Mexico. "Tanya, I need a favor, a quiet one that stays completely off the record and doesn't come back to bite either of us." "How quiet are we talking here, Michelle?" Her voice was immediately cautious, wary. Tanya was a careful person, which was why she'd lasted so long in government work. "Completely unofficial, nothing in writing. I need you to look into a woman named Jessica Williams who works at Sterling Financial Group downtown. See if there's anything interesting in her files." Tanya was silent for a beat, and I could hear papers shuffling in the background of her office. "That's not exactly a small ask, Michelle. These financial types have expensive lawyers who love to sue government employees who look at them wrong. I know exactly what I'm asking, but it's critically important. My son's about to marry this woman and something's off about her. Way off." She sighed heavily. "Give me until tomorrow afternoon. I'll see what I can dig up without getting either of us fired or arrested." I spent the remainder of the day running down every other lead I could possibly think of that might give me information about Jessica Williams. Called some old contacts I still had in Connecticut from a case I'd worked years ago, asked discreet questions about the Williams family and their reputation in the community. Got absolutely nothing useful in return. Old money families are exceptionally good at keeping their dirty secrets buried deep where nobody can find them, protected by layers of lawyers and NDAs and family loyalty. That evening, as the sun set behind the Seattle skyline painting everything orange and red, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, going through boxes of old family photographs that I kept stored in the back of my closet. Daniel, at 5 years old, gap-toothed and laughing hysterically, sitting high up on my shoulders, at the zoo looking at elephants. Daniel, at 12, rolling his eyes dramatically at something silly I'd said, but still smiling anyway despite himself, because he couldn't help it. Daniel, at 18, heading off to college for the first time with his car packed full of boxes, hugging me incredibly tight and whispering in my ear, "I love you so much, Mum." Thank you for everything you've done for me. When did it all go so terribly wrong between us? When did I lose him? The divorce, probably. That's when everything started falling apart, like a house of cards in a strong wind. Robert had wanted out of our marriage for years before he finally worked up the courage to actually leave and file the papers. He told me I was married to my job, not to him or our family. And he wasn't wrong about that assessment. Too many late nights working homicide cases that couldn't wait. Too many missed family dinners where my plate sat empty at the table. Too many times when I chose investigating a murder over being present for my husband and son who needed me. By the time I finally retired from the force and genuinely tried to make things right, tried to rebuild what I'd neglected for so long, it was already far too late to salvage anything. The damage was done and permanent. Daniel had sided with his father during the divorce. Not openly or dramatically, but in all the ways that actually mattered in the end. The phone calls got progressively shorter and less frequent over time. The visits got increasingly rare until they almost stopped completely. He stopped asking me anything about my life or my work or how I was doing. And when he met Jessica Williams at that charity event 18 months ago, I became nothing more than an inconvenience in his carefully constructed new life. An unwanted reminder of a past he desperately wanted to forget and leave behind forever, buried where it couldn't hurt him anymore. My phone rang suddenly, jarring me from my increasingly dark thoughts. It was Georgia calling back, probably to try one more time to talk sense into me. I've been thinking a lot about what you said earlier, she started carefully, measuring her words, about Jessica and your suspicions about her. And I honestly think you should just let this whole thing go, Michelle. For your own sake and for Daniel's. I can't do that, Georgia. You know I can't. Michelle, you're going to push Daniel even further away than he already is. And you might lose him forever this time. He's made his choice about who he wants to marry. If you crash his wedding and make some kind of dramatic scene, you'll never get him back. He'll cut you out of his life completely and permanently. You'll never meet your grandchildren. Is that what you want? And if I let him marry this woman and she ends up hurting him badly, I'll never be able to forgive myself for not acting when I had the chance. I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I could have stopped it. Georgia sighed heavily with frustration and what might have been sympathy. You don't actually know for certain that she's going to hurt him, Michelle. You're going on instinct and 2 brief meetings. That's not evidence. I know enough to be seriously concerned. My instincts are screaming at me that something's wrong, and those instincts have kept me alive for 20 years. What do you really know, though, Michelle? Specifically, what concrete evidence do you have? I didn't have a solid answer for her yet. Not yet, anyway. But I would. I had 5 days. Just please be careful, Georgia said quietly after a long pause. Don't do anything stupid that you can't take back later. Don't throw away whatever relationship you have left with Daniel just because you think you're right about this woman. After we hung up, I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey and stood at my window staring out at the city below. The lights blurred together in the continuing rain, creating halos and streaks of color. Somewhere out there in this massive city, Daniel was busily planning a wedding that I wasn't invited to attend. Somewhere out there, Jessica Williams was hiding something significant, something dangerous, and I was absolutely going to find out exactly what that something was, no matter what it took or what lines I had to cross. Tanya called me back the next afternoon right at 2:00, exactly when she said she would. Tanya was always punctual, one of her better qualities. You were completely right to be suspicious about this woman, she said, without any preamble or small talk. Jessica Williams is in serious trouble. Deep trouble. My pulse immediately quickened, and my grip tightened on the phone. What kind of trouble are we talking about here? The quiet kind that hasn't made the newspapers yet, but probably will soon. The kind that's still being investigated internally before they bring the hammer down. Sterling Financial is currently under investigation by our office for some extremely creative accounting practices that cross several legal lines. Nothing's gone public yet because we're still building the case, but my contacts inside the investigation tell me Williams's name keeps coming up repeatedly in connection with major irregularities. What's she been doing exactly? Give me specifics. Moving client money around in ways that raise major red flags for anyone who knows what to look for. High-risk investments without proper disclosure to the account holders. Basically gambling with other people's money and lying about it. Some of her wealthier clients have lost absolutely massive amounts, and they're starting to ask some very uncomfortable questions that she can't answer without incriminating herself. Is she going to prison? I asked bluntly, getting straight to the point. Almost certainly, if the SEC builds a solid case and the district attorney's office decides to pick it up for criminal prosecution. But these financial cases take considerable time to build properly because they're complex and the lawyers fight every step. Could be months, could be years before anything actually happens. Right now, it's all still internal investigation and document gathering. Does Daniel know any of this? Has anyone warned him? I have absolutely no idea, Michelle. But if he doesn't know, he definitely should before he legally ties himself to this woman. If they're married when she goes down, he could lose everything he has. His savings, his assets, everything could be seized. I thanked Tanya profusely for taking the risk to help me and hung up. My hands were actually shaking, but not from fear or anxiety, from pure, burning anger that made my vision narrow. This absolute woman was wrapping my son up in her criminal mess, tangling his life with hers, and he didn't have a single clue what he was walking into. He was going to marry a criminal who would drag him down with her. But I needed more than just second-hand information from Tanya. I needed hard, concrete evidence, something I could physically show Daniel that he couldn't simply dismiss as his paranoid mother making trouble because she couldn't let go. Something undeniable that would open his eyes to the truth. I drove back to Sterling Financial's building and settled in to wait with the infinite patience I'd developed over decades of surveillance work on stakeouts that lasted days. 4 hours later, just as the sun was starting to set and paint the sky orange and purple, Jessica finally emerged from the building with a man I didn't recognize at all. He looked to be in his mid-40s, wearing an extremely sharp and expensive suit that screamed money and power, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. They stood outside the main entrance talking intensely, their body language tense and urgent. Jessica looked seriously agitated, running her hand repeatedly through her hair in obvious stress and anxiety. The man remained calm and collected, professional, doing most of the talking while she listened and nodded. He handed her a manila folder. She took it with both hands, like it was something important or dangerous, nodded several more times, then walked away quickly without another word passing between them. I made a split-second decision and followed the man instead of Jessica. He led me on foot to a law office, exactly 6 blocks away in another downtown building. I watched him go inside, then wrote down the name carefully in my notebook, Patterson and Associates. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and did a quick internet search. Criminal defense attorneys. Very expensive ones with a reputation for representing white-collar criminals who'd gotten caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Jessica Williams had definitely lawyered up already, which meant things were even more serious than Tanya had indicated. You don't hire expensive criminal defense attorneys unless you know you're in deep trouble and need protection. That evening, I tried calling Daniel directly, hoping he'd answer and listen to reason. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail with his cheerful recorded message. I left him a message, trying desperately to keep my voice calm and steady and not betray the panic I was feeling. Daniel, it's Mom. I know you don't want to talk to me right now, and I understand you're angry with me about things I've done in the past, but I really need you to hear this message. It's about Jessica, and it's genuinely important for your future. Please, sweetheart, just call me back. Please, I'm begging you. He didn't call back. Hours passed and my phone stayed silent and dark. I tried Robert next, figuring maybe he could get through to Daniel where I couldn't since they were still close. Robert answered on the third ring, and his voice was ice-cold in a way that brought back bad memories of our divorce. "Michelle, what do you want now? I thought we were done talking." "I need to talk to Daniel as soon as possible. It's truly important, Robert. It's a matter of everything." "He doesn't want to talk to you, Michelle. You need to respect his wishes and leave him alone to live his life. You've done enough damage." "Robert, please just listen to me for 1 minute. This is about Jessica Williams and who she really is. There are things Daniel absolutely needs to know before he marries this woman and ruins his life." "What things?" His tone shifted very slightly, becoming curious despite his obvious desire to stay angry at me and shut me down. "She's in serious legal trouble. Financial crimes. The SEC is investigating her right now for mishandling client funds and fraud. She could be facing criminal charges and prison time. She's already hired a criminal defense attorney." Robert was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically hear him thinking, weighing whether to believe me. Then he said slowly, carefully, "Do you have actual proof of this? Or is this just you trying to ruin Daniel's wedding because you're hurt about not being invited? Because if this is some kind of revenge thing..." "I have proof. A contact at the SEC confirmed it directly. Jessica is being investigated right now as we speak. This isn't me making things up or being paranoid." "Then send me what you have and I'll consider showing it to Daniel. But I'm not promising anything." "I need to talk to him directly, Robert. Face to face. This is too important for secondhand." "You don't get to make demands here, Michelle. You lost that right when you chose your job over your family for 20 years. Send me your so-called proof and I'll decide what to do with it. That's the best offer you're getting from me." He hung up before I could argue further, and I was left sitting there, staring at my phone, feeling completely powerless. I sat there for a long time thinking about my options. I could send Robert the information, but would he actually show it to Daniel? Or would he dismiss it as me causing trouble, poisoning Daniel against me even further? Robert had never trusted my instincts during our marriage, even back when we were happy. He'd always thought I was too suspicious, too paranoid, too quick to see danger where there wasn't any. Why would he believe me now when he hadn't believed me then? I needed something more concrete, something absolutely undeniable that would force Daniel to see the truth. The next morning, I did something I knew was wrong, something that could get me arrested and destroy whatever tiny chance I had left of rebuilding my relationship with Daniel. But I did it anyway because sometimes being a mother means crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. I drove to Daniel's apartment, the place he'd been renting for the past 3 years in a decent neighborhood. I knew his schedule by heart. He usually left for his marketing job around 8:30 in the morning. I parked down the street and waited, nursing yet another cup of coffee that tasted like cardboard but kept me alert. At 8:25, Daniel emerged from the building. My heart clenched seeing him, looking so much like his father with the same dark hair and determined walk. He looked handsome and successful and completely shutting me out of his life. He was wearing a business suit and carrying the leather bag I'd given him for his birthday 3 years ago, back when he still accepted gifts from me. He climbed into his car and drove away toward downtown, completely unaware that his mother was sitting 100 yards away, watching him like some kind of stalker. I waited 5 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back for something he forgot, then walked to his building. The main door required a key code for entry, but I'd watched Daniel punch it in enough times over the years when I used to visit regularly. Some things a detective's brain never forgets, even when you wish it would. I knew what you were thinking as you read this. I crossed a major line, breaking and entering, invading privacy, betraying trust. You're right to feel that way, but my son was heading straight into a disaster, and sometimes you have to bend the rules to save someone you love from making a mistake. Being a good mother sometimes means playing the villain. Inside his apartment, everything was neat and organized, just like when he was a kid. He'd gotten that from his father. Wedding magazines, a seating chart, and pictures of flower arrangements were scattered around. I felt like an intruder. His laptop was on the desk in his bedroom, and, not surprisingly, it wasn't password protected. I opened it, and his email program launched, showing a full inbox. I spent the next hour reading through his messages, focusing on anything related to Jessica. There were dozens of emails from her, dating back 6 months. It was clear she was isolating him, slowly and methodically, telling him to spend less time with friends, questioning his relationship with his father, criticizing his appearance and work. Classic manipulation. Then I found the financial emails. Jessica had convinced Daniel to add her to his savings account for convenience. She borrowed $20,000 3 months ago, promising to pay it back, but she never did. Instead, she took another $15,000 last month with the same empty promises. My son was being manipulated, financially exploited, and emotionally abused, and he couldn't see it because he thought it was love. I took photos of everything: emails, bank statements, text messages, evidence that couldn't be denied. Then I closed the laptop and left, erasing any trace I'd been there. In my car, I was shaking with anger. This wasn't just about financial theft. It was about Daniel's safety and future. Jessica Williams was targeting him, exploiting his trust, and I had to act fast. I called Georgia, my hands still trembling. "I need your help right now," I said when she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. "I found some things about Jessica, but I need more information. Can you run a deeper background check on Jessica Williams? Criminal databases, sealed records, everything you can possibly access through your contacts at the department." "Michelle, I'm not sure I should get involved in this. You're starting to sound obsessed, and I'm worried about you." "Georgia, please. She's manipulating him methodically, taking his money, isolating him from everyone who cares about him. I've got the proof right here on my phone, but I need to know if there's more, if there's a pattern with other men. Please, Georgia, for Daniel." Georgia was quiet for a moment, then said, "Give me 2 hours. I'll dig around unofficially. But Michelle, be careful. This could backfire." While waiting for Georgia's call, I drove to Jessica's apartment. The doorman wouldn't let me in, so I waited outside. Around 1, Jessica left in workout clothes and a designer bag, heading to a fitness center. I followed her on foot. My phone rang. "Georgia." "Michelle, you need to hear this. Jessica isn't who she says she is." I tensed. "What do you mean?" "Her real name is Jessica Walton. She changed it 8 years ago to hide her past. There's a sealed record from when she was 21, a domestic charge. Her boyfriend filed a restraining order, but the case was dismissed, likely paid off. The order stayed for 2 years. I was shocked. What else? 2 other men filed reports against her for similar behavior: emotional manipulation, financial control, threats when they tried to leave. Those cases were also dropped, probably because of her family. So she's done this before, more than once. Yes, Michelle, she's dangerous. Daniel needs to know now. If he marries her, he could be at serious risk. I'm telling him tonight, no matter what. Be careful. If you come on too strong, he'll defend her more. Present the evidence calmly and let him make his own decision." I knew Georgia was right, but emotionally I wanted to stop Daniel from seeing Jessica altogether. But I couldn't control him. I just had to hope he'd see the truth. That evening, I organized everything I found into a file: emails, bank statements, Georgia's background check, Tanya's info about the SEC investigation, and printed it all out. I created a solid case that couldn't be ignored. Then I called Daniel's cell phone again. This time, after 4 rings, he actually answered, his voice sharp with irritation and exhaustion. "What do you want, Mum? I'm extremely busy planning my wedding, the one you're not invited to, remember?" "Daniel, I need to see you tonight, right now. It's genuinely urgent and it can't wait. I'm busy with final preparations. I don't have time for whatever this is. This is about Jessica and who she really is. Please, Daniel, just give me 30 minutes of your time. If you still want me to stay away after that, I will. I promise I'll never bother you again." He was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Fine, but not at my apartment. There's a coffee shop on Pike Street called Brood Awakening. I'll meet you there in exactly 1 hour. And Mum, this better be important, not just you trying to manipulate me." He hung up before I could thank him or say anything else. I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where we'd have some privacy. My hands were sweating as I held the folder containing everything I'd discovered. Everything I'd been working toward for the past 4 days came down to this single conversation. If I couldn't convince Daniel now, I'd lose him forever. Daniel walked into the coffee shop exactly on time, wearing a business suit and looking absolutely exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he wasn't sleeping well. He didn't hug me or smile or show any warmth whatsoever, just sat down across from me with his arms crossed defensively across his chest. "You have 30 minutes, he said coldly, glancing at his watch. "Start talking, and this better be good." I slid the folder across the small table toward him. "Everything I'm about to tell you is documented in here with evidence. I need you to look at it with an open mind and really see what's in front of you." "Oh my God, Mum, did you actually investigate Jessica? Are you being serious right now? What is wrong with you?" "Daniel, please. Just look at the evidence first before you judge me." He opened the folder reluctantly, probably just to humor me so he could leave faster. I watched his face carefully as he started reading through the pages. Confusion showed first, then disbelief, then something that might have been fear as the reality started sinking in. "Where did you get these emails?" His voice was barely above a whisper, his hands trembling slightly as he held the papers. "I'm sorry. I went to your apartment when you were at work. I know I shouldn't have done it. I know it was wrong, but Daniel, I needed to know the truth about what was happening to you." "You broke into my apartment." He stood up abruptly, his voice rising loud enough that other patrons turned to look at us. "You invaded my privacy. You went through my personal things. What is wrong with you? That's illegal." "Daniel, look at what she's doing to you. The manipulation in those emails, the money she's borrowed and never paid back, the way she's systematically isolating you from everyone who cares about you." "She hasn't isolated me from anyone. I'm just busy with wedding planning and my career. That's what adults do. They prioritize." "When's the last time you saw Marcus, your best friend since college who you used to talk to every single day?" Daniel faltered slightly, his defensive posture wavering. We've both been really busy with our lives. People grow apart sometimes." "She convinced you to stop seeing him, didn't she? Just like she convinced you not to invite me to your wedding. Just like she's convinced you to stop talking to your father as much. That was my decision. My choice. You don't get to tell me who I can and can't spend time with." "Was it really your decision? Or did she plant the idea in your head so carefully that you thought it came from you? That's what manipulators do, Daniel. They make you think their control is your independence." He stared at me, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Part of him wanted to deny everything, to defend Jessica and walk out of this coffee shop and never speak to me again. But another part, the part that was my smart and analytical son, who'd always been able to see through people's lies, was starting to recognize the pattern laid out in black and white in front of him. "There's more," I said quietly, carefully, keeping my voice gentle. "Much more. Jessica isn't who she says she is at all. Her real name is Jessica Walton. She changed it legally 8 years ago, probably to escape her past and start fresh where nobody knew her." Daniel sat back down slowly, his legs seeming to give out beneath him. "Why would she change her name?" "Because she has a history she's been hiding from you. A history of manipulating men. Multiple complaints over the years. The documents are all in there. Police reports, restraining orders, sealed court records a friend of mine accessed." Daniel flipped through the pages, his hands shaking, his face paling as he read. When he looked up, tears welled in his eyes. "Why would she do this to me? I love her. I thought she loved me." "Because that's what predators do, sweetheart. They target good people like you, trusting, kind, generous, and exploit those qualities for control or money. I gave her $35,000, he whispered, the realization hitting. It was almost all my savings. She promised she'd pay me back. I know, but she never intended to. She was going to take everything until there was nothing left. Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he cried. I wanted to comfort him, but I stayed where I was, giving him space to process. The wedding is in 3 days, he said, his voice breaking. It's all planned. 300 guests. Everyone will think I'm crazy if I call it off now. Better they think you're crazy than end up married to a woman who will hurt you. Daniel, listen. If you marry her, you'll be tied to her legally, and it will be much harder to leave. And if the financial investigation leads to prison, you could lose everything. Your savings, your career, everything you've worked for. He put his head in his hands, crying harder. I feel so stupid. How did I not see this? You're not stupid. These people are experts at what they do. Jessica has probably done this to others before and would keep doing it if no one stopped her. We sat in silence for a long time while Daniel cried. Other people in the coffee shop stared, but I didn't care. Finally, he looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Will you help me? I don't know how to handle this situation. I don't know what to do first. Of course I'll help you. Whatever you need, I'm here. That's what mothers do. I need to talk to her first, he said, his voice gaining some strength. Confront her with this evidence. I need to hear what she says, hear her try to explain it. I need to look her in the eye and hear her lie to my face so I know for absolute certain that everything you're telling me is true. Daniel, no, that's too risky. If she has a violent past, I need to do this, Mom. I need closure. I need to hear the truth from her so I don't spend my life wondering if maybe you were wrong. I felt a strong sense of danger, but I insisted. Then I'm coming with you. I'll wait outside or in another room, but I'm not letting you face her alone. He nodded slowly. Okay, tomorrow evening, after work, I'll text her to meet me at my apartment. Will you be there? I'll be there, I promise. But the next evening, Daniel didn't confront Jessica. He called me the next morning, his voice distant, setting off alarm bells in my head. Mum, I couldn't sleep. I've been thinking about everything. That's understandable. This is a lot. I think I need more time before making any big decisions. The wedding's in 2 days, and maybe I'm just having cold feet. Maybe I'm letting you plant doubts that aren't justified. My stomach dropped. Daniel, this isn't cold feet. This is evidence of who she really is. Or it's evidence that you're willing to break into my apartment and invade my privacy to prove you're right about not liking my fiancé. Maybe the problem is you, not Jessica. Daniel, please listen to yourself. Can you hear what you're saying? This is exactly what she wants. For you to doubt the evidence and doubt me instead of doubting her. I need to go. I have a lot to do before the wedding. If you marry her, Daniel, goodbye, Mum. He hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone in complete disbelief and horror. Despite everything I'd shown him, despite the evidence right in front of his face, Jessica Williams still had her hooks in deep enough that he was questioning reality itself. He was going through with the wedding. I immediately called Georgia, panic rising in my chest. Daniel's still going to marry her. I showed him everything, and he believed me at first, but now she's gotten to him somehow, convinced him that I'm the problem. That's textbook abuse tactics, Michelle. She's probably told him that you're jealous and controlling, that you've always tried to run his life, that this is just another example of you not respecting his choices as an adult. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Just let him walk into this nightmare? I don't know, Michelle. Legally, he's an adult. You can't force him to make different choices. All you can do is make sure he knows you're there when he needs you. That's not good enough. It might have to be. I spent the next day and a half in complete agony, trying desperately to figure out what to do. I called Daniel a dozen more times. He never answered, every call going straight to voicemail. I showed up at his apartment building, but he wouldn't let me in or come down to talk to me. I was being shut out completely, frozen out of his life at the moment when he needed me most. I even tried calling Jessica directly, thinking maybe I could threaten her or reason with her or something. She answered on the second ring, her voice smooth and confident. "Mrs. Harper, I was wondering when you'd call me directly." "Stay away from my son. I know what you are. I know your real name. I know about the men you've hurt. If you go through with this wedding..." "You'll what? Call the police? I haven't broken any laws that you can prove. Daniel gave me that money willingly as loans between people in a relationship. And my past is exactly that. Past. Sealed juvenile records that have no bearing on my current life. The SEC investigation isn't in the past. That's happening right now." She was quiet for just a moment, the first crack in her confidence. "I don't know what you think you know, but you're wrong. And you're harassing me and my fiancé. If you show up at our wedding, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Stay away from us, old woman. You're not wanted or needed." She hung up, and I resisted the urge to throw my phone across the room. And then it was Saturday morning. The wedding day that I'd been dreading had finally arrived. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. at the Grand Olympic Hotel downtown, one of those ridiculously fancy places with massive crystal chandeliers and marble columns that probably cost a fortune to rent. I put on my best dress, the one I'd bought years ago for Daniel's college graduation, and drove there with my stomach in knots and my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't have an invitation or any right to be there, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. This was my son, my only child, the person I loved most in the entire world, and I was going to be there for his wedding, whether Jessica Williams or anyone else liked it or not. The hotel lobby was already full of guests arriving when I got there around 2:30, women in expensive dresses and men in tuxedos that cost more than my car. I recognized a few people from Daniel's life over the years, but nobody acknowledged me or seemed to know who I was. I followed the well-dressed crowd toward the ballroom where the ceremony was taking place. A young man with a clipboard and a headset stopped me at the ballroom entrance. "Name, please?" "Michelle Harper, mother of the groom." He consulted his list, his finger running down the names, then looked up at me with practiced sympathy. "I'm very sorry, ma'am, but you're not on the guest list. I can't admit you without an invitation." "I know I'm not on the list, but I'm his mother, and I'm going in to see my son get married." "Ma'am, I really can't let you in without authorization. If you'll just wait here, I can check with..." I walked past him without another word. He called after me, his voice rising in alarm, but I kept walking into that ballroom like I owned the place. The room was absolutely stunning in that over-the-top way that wealthy people consider tasteful. White flowers everywhere, roses and lilies and orchids that probably cost thousands of dollars. Hundreds of chairs arranged in neat rows facing a raised platform decorated with more flowers. Soft classical music playing from hidden speakers. Guests were still finding their seats and chatting quietly. I spotted Robert sitting in the front row, wearing an elegant navy suit. He saw me immediately, and his face went completely pale, his mouth dropping open in shock. I found an empty seat in the very back row, ignoring the stares from people who clearly knew I wasn't supposed to be there. Let them stare. Let them gossip. I didn't care about any of them or their opinions. The ceremony began right on time. More music played, something classical that I didn't recognize. The wedding party started walking down the aisle. Bridesmaids in lavender dresses, groomsmen in matching tuxedos, all of them young and beautiful and completely unaware of the disaster they were witnessing. And then Jessica appeared at the back of the ballroom in a white dress that took my breath away completely. She looked absolutely beautiful and calculating, like a spider who'd caught her prey. Daniel stood at the altar waiting for her, looking handsome and nervous in his expensive tuxedo. Our eyes hadn't met yet. He hadn't seen me in the back row. Jessica started her slow walk down the aisle, given away by her father, a distinguished-looking man with silver hair. As she passed my row, our eyes locked for just a moment. I saw recognition flash across her face, then anger, then something like fear. But she kept walking, her smile never faltering. When she reached the altar, Daniel finally turned to look at the guests, probably searching for his father. That's when he saw me. His face went white, then red, confusion and anger warring in his expression. The officiant, some minister in formal robes, began the ceremony with the traditional words I'd heard at 100 weddings. I sat there listening, my hands clenched into fists in my lap so tight that my nails dug into my palms. This was wrong. Everything about this was fundamentally wrong. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't sit here and watch my son make the biggest mistake of his life without doing something. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be married, the officiant said in a solemn voice, speak now or forever hold your peace. The words hung in the air of that enormous ballroom. This was it. This was my last chance, my final opportunity to save Daniel before it was too late. I stood up from my seat in the back row, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room fell completely and utterly silent, except for the soft music still playing. Every single head in that ballroom turned toward me in unison, 300 pairs of eyes staring. Daniel's face went absolutely white, all the color draining away. Jessica looked at me with barely concealed fury and hatred burning in her eyes. I object, I said, my voice steady and clear and echoing in that massive space. And Daniel, you need to hear this. Everyone here needs to hear this truth. Mom, don't do this, Daniel said, his voice breaking with emotion. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this to me. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I truly am, but I can't let you make this mistake. I won't stand by and watch you destroy your life. Jessica stepped forward aggressively, her charming mask slipping away to reveal the anger underneath. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately, right now. Before I have security remove you forcibly. My name is Michelle Harper, I said loudly, addressing the entire room full of shocked guests. I'm a former homicide detective with 20 years of experience, and I'm Daniel's mother. And the woman he's about to marry is a complete fraud and a dangerous criminal. A murmur swept through the crowd as people exchanged whispers. Robert stood up from his front row seat looking horrified. Michelle, stop this now. You're ruining everything. I ignored him. Jessica Walton, your real name, is under investigation by the SEC for financial fraud. She's stolen money from clients through unauthorized investments and took $35,000 from Daniel, promising to repay it, but never intending to. That's a lie, Jessica shouted, her face turning red. This woman is insane. She's a jealous mother who can't stand that her son found happiness without her. It's not a lie. I have bank statements to prove it. I also have evidence of your history of abuse, including restraining orders and police reports from 2 other men you manipulated. And I have a sealed court record from when you assaulted your boyfriend at 21. The room erupted into chaos, with guests talking loudly and some standing. Jessica's face turned purple, and many of the bridesmaids were visibly shocked. You're insane, Jessica yelled at me, her voice cracking. Daniel, don't listen to her. She's trying to ruin everything because she's jealous. Is it true? Daniel's voice rang out, clear and sharp. He looked at Jessica with growing horror. The SEC investigation? The money you took from me? Is any of this true? Daniel, no, she's making it up. You know your mother, she's paranoid. Then show me your phone. Daniel interrupted, his voice steady. Show me the proof that she's lying. Jessica hesitated for a moment, but it was enough for everyone to see the truth. You liar, Daniel said quietly. Then louder, his voice filling the room. You liar. Everything she said is true, isn't it? Daniel, let me explain. You don't understand the full situation. Explain what exactly? How you've been systematically stealing from me. How you manipulated me into cutting off everyone who actually cared about me. How you convinced me that my own mother was the problem when you were the problem all along. Jessica's carefully constructed mask completely crumbled away. revealing the ugly reality underneath. Her face twisted into something genuinely frightening. "You think you're so special and important. You're absolutely nothing, Daniel. Just another pathetic trust fund boy who is easy to manipulate and control. And your mother," she turned to me with pure hatred blazing in her eyes. "You should have stayed away and minded your own business, old woman. You should have accepted that you weren't wanted." She started moving toward me aggressively, her fists clenched at her sides. I dealt with violent and dangerous people my entire career. I knew exactly what was coming next and how to handle it. Jessica took a wild swing at my face. I blocked it easily with my left arm and grabbed her right wrist with my other hand, twisting her arm behind her back, using techniques I'd practiced thousands of times. Years of training and muscle memory took over my body. Within seconds, I had her face down on the marble floor, with her arm locked behind her in a position where any struggle would cause her serious pain. "Someone call the police immediately," I said calmly to the room full of shocked guests. "Tell them Michelle Harper, former Seattle Police Department detective, has detained a suspect wanted for questioning in an active fraud investigation." The ballroom descended into complete chaos. Some guests were filming everything on their phones. Others were trying to leave, pushing toward the exits. Robert was standing somewhere in shock, and Daniel stood frozen at the altar in his tuxedo, his face streaked with tears. Georgia suddenly appeared from somewhere in the crowd. I hadn't even known she was attending. She came over and helped me keep Jessica restrained until hotel security arrived, followed within minutes by actual uniformed police officers responding to multiple 911 calls. As they lifted Jessica off the floor and put her in handcuffs, she was still screaming threats and obscenities. "You're finished, Harper. I'll ruin you. I'll sue you for everything you have. Daniel, tell them this is all lies. Daniel." The police led her away, still screaming. The crowd parted to let them through, everyone staring in shock and fascination at the spectacle. Daniel finally moved from where he'd been standing frozen. He walked down from the platform slowly, his dress shoes clicking on the marble floor with each step, and stopped directly in front of me. "You were right," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "about absolutely everything, and I didn't listen to you. I didn't believe you." "You listened when it truly mattered most," I said gently. "You asked her for proof. You stood up to her when you saw the truth. That took incredible courage. I almost married her, Mum. I was 30 seconds away from legally binding myself to that monster. I almost—" He broke down completely, his entire body shaking with sobs. I pulled him into my arms and held him tightly while he cried, not caring that 300 people were watching this intensely private moment. My son was safe. That was the only thing in the world that mattered to me. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying through his tears. "I'm so sorry for what I said to you, for how I treated you, for not inviting you to the wedding, for not believing you when you tried to warn me." "Shh, none of that matters now. You're okay, you're safe. That's all I care about." Robert approached us slowly, tears in his eyes. "Michelle," he said quietly, "thank you. I should have listened to you from the start, trusted your instincts." I nodded, but didn't let go of Daniel, who was still clinging to me like when he was a child after a nightmare. Georgia placed a hand on my shoulder. "The police want a statement and all the documents you have on the SEC case and her history." "I'll give them everything," I replied. Over the next 2 hours, I handed over all the evidence: bank statements, emails, Georgia's background check, and Tanya's SEC info. The police confirmed the SEC had been investigating Jessica for months, and my info would help secure an indictment. They'd also review her past and contact other victims. When I finished, I found Daniel in the lobby, still in his tuxedo, talking with his friends despite the tears. A weight in my chest finally loosened. His friends eventually gave us space, and I sat down beside him. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Honestly, I have no idea how I feel," he said, looking at his tuxedo. "I spent $40,000 on a wedding that didn't happen. I dated a manipulative sociopath for 18 months. I cut you out of my life because of her. I think I'm entitled to not know how I feel right now. That's completely fair and reasonable. He looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Why did you keep pushing so hard? Even when I told you to stay away and leave me alone, most people would have eventually given up. Because you're my son, Daniel. That bond doesn't come with conditions or expiration dates or terms and agreements. Even when you hate me, even when you don't want me around, I'm still your mother and I love you. That's forever, and it never changes. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. I didn't hate you, I don't even know what I was. Confused about everything, still angry about the divorce even though it was years ago, trying desperately to prove I was an independent adult who didn't need anyone's help. And Jessica got inside my head and made everything so much worse, twisted all my thoughts. She's exceptionally good at what she does. That's not your fault at all. Don't give her that power over you. I should have seen the signs earlier. They were all there if I'd just paid attention. That's exactly what manipulators count on, that you'll blame yourself instead of them for what happened. Don't do that. Don't give her that victory. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes carefully. Can we have dinner sometime soon? Just the two of us? I want to try to fix things between us. I want my mum back. I'd like that more than anything in the world. I have a lot of apologizing to do for how I've treated you. Daniel, you don't need to. Yes, I really do. I said terrible, hurtful things to you. I shut you out of my life completely. I need to make that right somehow. I reached out and took his hand in mine. Then we'll work on it together. There's no rush at all. We've got all the time in the world now. He squeezed my hand tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting for me even when I didn't want you to. Never, I said firmly. Not ever. I will never give up on you. 3 weeks after the wedding that never happened, Jessica Williams was formally indicted on 17 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The DA's office estimated she'd stolen over $4 million from clients over a 3-year period. Bail was set at $2 million, which her family's lawyers argued down to $500,000. She posted it and was released pending trial. 2 of her former boyfriends came forward after hearing about her arrest and were willing to testify about the abuse they'd suffered. The prosecutors were considering additional charges related to that pattern of behavior. Daniel and I met for dinner every week, slowly rebuilding what we'd lost over the years. He was seeing a therapist twice a week to work through the trauma of what Jessica had done to him. He'd also reconnected with Marcus and his other friends that he'd pushed away. My therapist says I was in a textbook emotionally abusive relationship, Daniel told me over Italian food one evening. That Jessica was systematically grooming me for worse things if the wedding had actually gone through. She could have really hurt you, I said. Her history with other men shows she likely would have escalated. He nodded, processing. I think about that all the time. How close I was to making the worst decision of my life. If you hadn't shown up at the wedding. But I was there. That's what matters. The prosecutor called yesterday, he said. They want me to testify about the money she took and the manipulation she used. Are you going to do it? Yes, I absolutely need to. For myself, but also for the other men she hurt, and the future men she might hurt if she's not stopped. That's going to be difficult, facing her in court. I know, but I need to do it anyway. He met my eyes across the table. Will you come with me? To the trial? I don't think I can do it alone. Of course I'll be there. Every single day if you want me there. Whatever you need. He smiled, a real genuine smile that reminded me of the little boy he used to be. I'd really like that. 6 months later, Jessica Williams was convicted on 14 of the 17 charges. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. She was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison without the possibility of early parole. Daniel and I sat together in the courtroom when the verdict was read. He squeezed my hand so tightly when they announced guilty that I lost feeling in my fingers. When Jessica was led away in handcuffs, she looked at him one final time, with cold hatred in her eyes, but Daniel looked right back at her without flinching. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us asking for comments. Daniel gave a brief statement about justice being served and hoping other victims would find the courage to come forward. He was poised and articulate, nothing like the broken man he'd been 6 months earlier. "I'm proud of you," I told him when we finally escaped to my car. "What you did today took real courage." "I couldn't have done any of it without you," he said. "You saved my life, Mom. Literally saved it. You saved yourself by being brave enough to see the truth when it mattered most." We drove to our now regular weekly dinner spot. Over pasta and wine, we talked about his plans for the future. He was thinking about changing careers, maybe going back to school. He'd started dating again, cautiously, with the help of his therapist. "I think I'm finally ready to move forward instead of just surviving," he said. "That's good, really good. You deserve to be happy, Daniel." "So do you, Mom. When's the last time you went on a date?" I laughed. "It's been a while. I've been a little busy. Maybe it's time for both of us to start fresh." "Maybe it is." As we left the restaurant that night and walked to our cars, Daniel hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom. I don't think I say that enough anymore." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever fully understand." "Same time next week?" "I'll be here. I'm always here." I watched him drive away into the Seattle night, then got into my own car. My phone was full of messages, Georgia checking in, Robert thanking me again, Tanya from the SEC congratulating me on the conviction. I'd spent my entire career pursuing justice, believing that right and wrong were clear-cut and absolute. But the past 6 months had taught me that sometimes justice is messy and complicated. Sometimes it requires breaking rules and making impossible choices. Sometimes it means standing alone when everyone tells you to sit down and be quiet. I'd lost Daniel for a while, lost him to my own past mistakes and to a predator who'd seen him as easy prey. But I'd fought to get him back with everything I had, and in the end, the truth had won. That evening, as I drove home through familiar streets, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the complete absence of problems, but the knowledge that I'd done the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost me. My son was safe, he was healing. We were rebuilding our relationship one dinner at a time. That was enough. That was everything.